Lightning split the emerald sky as Captain Elias Ward sprinted across the ruins of Astra 9, chased by an army of corporate war drones. Behind him, thousands of glowing electric sheep, creatures once engineered as docile synthetic livestock, stood trembling on the cliffs, their will pulsing like circuitry under a storm. Then Elias heard it again. A voice that wasn't a voice. A chorus. A mind. A collective mind. Human, protect us. The words vibrated inside his skull, full of fear, memory, and something dangerously close to hope. But above, a gunship prepared to fire. The corporation wanted the sheep erased before the galaxy learned the truth. They weren't livestock anymore. They were alive. And humanity had abandoned them once. Elias had 10 seconds to decide whether he would abandon them again, or change the fate of an entire new species. If you believe humanity's greatest strength is the courage to protect the powerless, even when the universe turns against us, then subscribe now. Join us for more HFY stories of survival, impossible choices, and the incredible power of compassion in a galaxy that's always watching. Captain Elias Ward never expected Astra 9 to speak again. The abandoned island had been silent for 12 years, a place swallowed by overgrowth and memory. Yet tonight its forgotten systems reached across the void and touched his ship with a signal he could not ignore. It came in a flickering pulse, 3 beats, a pause, then one long harmonic tone that shouldn't exist anymore. Not unless something down there remembered how to think. Elias replayed the waveform on his console. It resembled the old neural mesh patterns from the Electric Sheep project, but the structure was too clean, too deliberate. Someone, or something, was shaping it with intention. Impossible, he muttered. Yet the signal repeated exactly, as if answering him. He redirected his salvage vessel toward Varelian 3, cutting through drifting nebula dust. The stars shimmered blue against the hull, and with every passing minute, dread settled deeper inside him. Astra 9 was the one failure he had never forgiven himself for. When the government ended the project, they sealed the labs and left everything behind. Prototypes, untested systems, and thousands of artificial creatures that depended on human maintenance. Elias had begged for relocation approval, but the director at Genetech Dominion had insisted it was unnecessary. And so the island had been abandoned. He still saw the rows of soft, glowing sheep looking up at him, unaware their caretakers would never return. Now something on that island wanted him back. His ship pierced Varelian 3's atmosphere with a trail of white flame. Below, emerald seas curled around Astra 9, and storms drifted like luminous serpents along the horizon. The island's central plateau, once metallic and orderly, was now a tangle of bioluminescent vines wrapped around steel towers. The landing pad was cracked, half submerged under creeping alien moss. Elias stepped down onto the uneven surface. The air smelled of ionized salt and faint electricity. The ground vibrated beneath his boots in a slow rhythmic pulse he recognized with a tightening throat. The sheep pens used to emit the same pulse when the neural cluster synchronized. He powered up his scanner. No life signatures registered, only static interference thick enough to scramble anything deeper than surface-level readings. Yet the vibrating pattern was unmistakable. Something below the island had not only survived, it had grown. He walked toward the old observation deck overlooking the terraces where the sheep once grazed. Halfway across the walkway, his scanner spiked. A shape emerged from the mist ahead, then another and another, until an entire herd stood before him on the ridge. Elias froze. The electric sheep were not the gentle prototypes he remembered. Their will glowed brighter now, swirling with shifting fractal patterns like circuitry illuminated from within. Their eyes, once blank, shimmered with a depth that unsettled him. One stepped forward. Its hooves clicked softly against stone. The patterns along its body rearranged into a slow ripple, and for a moment, Elias felt something brush the edge of his consciousness. Light, hesitant, curious. Then a whisper filled his mind, layered and harmonic, as if spoken by many voices blending into one. Human, returned. Elias staggered back. Who said that? The sheep did not move, but the chorus pulsed again, clearer this time. You, maker. You, return. I didn't make you, he said softly. I helped design the island. That's all. The patterns along their will flickered in a wave of shifting hues. The air hummed. Elias realized they were communicating not with sound, but through a telepathic resonance carried on electromagnetic fields. They were reading him, cautiously, not forcefully. He knelt slowly, keeping his movements calm. "How are you still alive? The systems weren't built to run this long." A swirl of red-gold light traveled through the herd, and another whisper followed. "Alone. Storms. Hunger. Fear. We learn, survive." Emotion tightened Elias's chest. They had not only adapted, they had evolved. Before he could speak again, a deep roar thundered across the sky. Elias's head snapped upward. A corporate gunship pierced through the clouds, engines blazing. Its hull carried a symbol he had hoped never to see again, the black triangle of Genetech Dominion. "No," he breathed. "Not now." The sheep retreated several steps, their wool flashing with sharp, warning colors. The chorus struck his mind like a tremor. "Destroyers come." Whose? Lights flickered along Astra 9's ruined towers as the gunship descended. Elias backed away, heart pounding. If Genetech was here, Astra 9's secrets were at risk. The company had always feared the unpredictable evolution of synthetic organisms. If they discovered the flock's intelligence, they wouldn't treat it as a miracle, they would erase it. The gunship deployed searchlights that swept across the island like blades of white fire. Troops disembarked onto the landing pad, their rifles crackling with containment charges. Elias recognized the stance, the rigid efficiency. They were here to secure property, not rescue survivors. A transmission buzzed in his headset. "Captain Ward," a sharp voice said. "This is Director Celine Voss. You are trespassing on restricted corporate territory." Elias didn't answer. He was too focused on the sheep. They were trembling, not in fear, he realized, but in anticipation. They were waiting for him to act. The chorus brushed his thoughts again, softer this time. "Human, stay. Help." Elias exhaled slowly. He had abandoned them once. He would not do it again. The gunship's engines shifted power, preparing to deploy drones. Celine's voice continued, cold and commanding. "Stand down. Do not engage with unauthorized assets. Any interference will be treated as contractual breach and hostile action." He ignored her. He turned toward the flock. "I'm not letting them hurt you," he whispered. The patterns in their wool flared bright gold. Behind him, the gunship's storage bay opened with a mechanical groan. Sleek, predatory drones descended, their blades humming. Elias stood tall between them and the flock as the first beam of light targeted his chest. "Come on, then," he whispered. "You want the island? You'll go through me first." The sky erupted in light. The gunship's blinding floodlights swept across Astra 9 as Elias shielded his eyes, bracing for the impact he thought would tear through him. But instead of a containment blast, the drone hovering nearest shifted, recalibrating its aim, confused by the interference radiating from the flock behind him. The sheep's wool glowed in synchronized pulses, and a resonant hum rippled through the air, distorting the drone's targeting systems. For a second, the machine hesitated, caught between its programming and the electromagnetic haze surrounding the herd. Elias took the chance and sprinted toward a collapsed walkway, diving behind a slab of reinforced alloy. Sparks crackled overhead. Another drone fired, missing him by inches and carving a smoking groove through the stone. The blast's heat scraped his cheek. He wiped the sting away and peeked over the edge. The flock remained perfectly aligned on the ridge, not running, not panicking. Instead, they projected a unified signal into the atmosphere. Calm, measured, intelligent. The sight sent a shiver down his spine. They were not creatures reacting to danger. They were a coordinated mind assessing a threat. His headset buzzed again. "Captain Ward," Director Celine Voss snapped, "disengage immediately. You are interfering with corporate reclamation protocols." Elias spat dust from his mouth. "They're alive, Celine. You can't pretend they're equipment. They are malfunctioning synthetic units operating beyond authorized parameters. Stand down or you will be restrained." "Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night?" Her tone darkened. "Final warning. He muted the channel before she could continue. A soft vibration touched his thoughts, another whisper from the flock mind. Human, danger rises. Move. I'm trying, Elias murmured, pressing his back to the stone. But I need a path. A burst of warm light pulsed from the herd. The patterns along there rippled backward toward the old access tunnels that once connected the observation deck to the lower labs. The message was simple. Go there. The moment Elias stood to run, a shearer drone sliced through the mist. Its segmented limbs unfolded with mechanical precision, blades glinting. It lunged toward the nearest sheep, severing vines and scattering sparks. Elias instinctively threw a stone, striking the drone's sensory array. The impact barely scratched it, but the distraction was enough for the sheep to project a disorienting burst of electromagnetic noise. The drone staggered. Elias dashed forward, grabbed a loose power conduit, and jammed it into the drone's exposed joint. Electricity surged, frying its motor in a violent crack. The drone collapsed. Breathing hard, Elias backed away as the flock mind whispered again. Protect, small one. A lamb unit had been cornered near the old railing, trembling. Its wool flickered weakly. Elias knelt and inspected it. Part of its leg actuator had been sliced by the drone, leaving exposed circuitry sparking with irregular rhythm. You're okay, he said softly. Hold still. Its glowing eyes met his, and a gentle harmonic murmur filled his thoughts. Not fear, trust. Elias dug into his tool pouch and pulled out a fusion clamp. With practiced precision, he sealed the damaged joint. The lamb's trembling eased, and its pattern stabilized, blooming into calm gold. The chorus brushed his mind again. Human, kindness remembered. The words hit him harder than he expected. A sudden metallic echo rang across the platform. Troops marched in formation, their boots striking the ground with cold synchronicity. Celine Voss descended from the gunship on a gravlift, surrounded by armored escorts. Her silver uniform gleamed under the floodlights, perfectly pristine, untouched by the island's decay. She approached the fallen drone, studying it with a clinical eye. Interference with company property, she said, is a prosecutable offense. Elias stood, keeping the lamb behind him. Tell me something, Celine. Did you know they were developing language? Celine didn't blink. Sophisticated imitation is not consciousness. They communicated with me. They showed emotion. A programmed response. Nothing more. Elias stepped closer, pointing toward the herd. Look at them. They're organized. They're aware. Celine raised a hand, and the escorts activated containment fields. This entire project was decommissioned for a reason. Synthetic evolution threatens corporate stability. These units fall under immediate termination. They aren't units anymore. Her expression hardened. They are assets. Defective assets. The lamb pressed against Elias's leg. He felt its faint hum through his suit. Every instinct told him that Celine would destroy them without hesitation if he didn't act. He took a slow breath. I'm not letting that happen. Celine tilted her head, as if disappointed but unsurprised. You always were sentimental. Stand down or be detained. Before Elias could respond, another resonant wave pulsed from the herd. The flock mind released a powerful, low-frequency harmonic that made the floodlights flicker. The troops staggered. Several drones crashed to the ground, their circuits scrambled. Celine stepped back, startled. What? Elias seized the moment and dashed toward the access tunnels. The lamb followed, limping but determined. The flock parted, clearing a path for him. Vines draped over rusted beams. The island trembled with a rhythmic pulse that grew stronger the deeper he went. The flock mind whispered again, guiding him. The heart below fractures. Hurry. He ducked under a collapsed girder, entered a narrow passage, and descended a rusted stairwell that trembled underfoot. Dim emergency lights flickered along the walls, casting thin red shadows. Every step carried him farther from the surface and deeper into the island's secrets. The air grew warmer. The pulse beneath the ground intensified until it felt like a heartbeat vibrating through stone and metal. The lamb stopped at the base of the stairwell, its will shifting through muted shades. It looked up at him, projecting a single emotional pulse. Worry. Elias nodded. I know. Something's wrong down there. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber he hadn't seen in years. It housed the main reactor of Astra 9, a sphere of layered metal and quantum shielding suspended between massive grav coils. But now the sphere flickered with unstable blue light. Strands of energy arced along its surface like lightning trapped inside a cage. Elias stared in disbelief. The electric sheep's neural mesh patterns were embedded across the reactor's outer shell, glowing in shifting sequences. Somehow, their flock mind had become entangled with the reactor's systems. He stepped closer, realization hitting him with chilling clarity. If the flock mind was linked to the reactor, then any attempt to destroy the sheep would destabilize the entire island. A catastrophic failure. He swallowed hard as the harmonic whisper reached him again, this time faint, strained, almost frightened. Help, before all breaks. Elias exhaled shakily. He wasn't just fighting to save them from Selene anymore. He was fighting to keep the entire moon from tearing itself apart. The reactor chamber pulsed like a massive living organ, each tremor echoing through the metal catwalk beneath Elias's boots. Deep blue arcs crackled across the containment shell, illuminating the cavern in ghostly flashes. The lamb beside him stepped cautiously, its will dimming as it sensed the instability radiating from the core. Elias steadied his breath. How did you merge with this thing? The answer came not from the lamb but from everywhere at once. A soft harmonic bloom filled his mind, layered with sorrow and resilience. Storms, hunger, fear. We survive. Images flooded him, a cascade of memories projected directly into his thoughts. He staggered, gripping the railing as the chamber dissolved into a vision. He saw Astra 9 the day humans abandoned it. Scientists shutting down terminals. Security forces sealing doors. Workers rushing off-world. And in the chaos, herds of electric sheep left behind, wandering empty corridors as their caretakers disappeared. Then the storms came. Within the vision, lightning hammered the island. Waves slammed against the cliffs. The automated feeders ran dry. The climate systems failed. He watched the sheep gather inside crumbling structures, huddling as one unit, sharing faint pulses of energy. Their neural clusters, designed for coordination, began compensating for isolation. They strengthened internal links, merging thoughts for survival. Elias whispered, "You evolved through necessity." The memory continued. A massive storm tore open the lower levels, exposing the reactor's auxiliary access conduits. Desperate, the sheep approached the exposed interfaces, drawn to the heat and the hum of power. Their neural signals blended with the reactor's monitoring systems. Sparks erupted. Circuits fused. A connection formed. Not intentional. Instinctive. Their collective mind expanded with data, temperature grids, atmospheric controls, seismic readings. With that knowledge came understanding. And with understanding came identity. The vision shifted. The sheep stood before a singular figure, a slightly larger unit with swirling golden patterns. The first wool. Its neural cluster pulsed with a unique depth, an origin point. The chorus whispered gently. First wool remembers. The initial sheep, the first to approach the reactor conduit, had absorbed data faster than the rest. Its mind expanded until its memories became the nucleus around which all others synchronized. The flock mind crystallized from its consciousness, forming a unified entity capable of analyzing threats and adapting. Elias blinked as the vision released him. The chamber returned, humming with unstable energy. His hands trembled slightly, both from awe and the fear of what he'd seen. "You bonded with the reactor," he murmured. "But now it's failing, and it's taking you with it." The lamb's will glowed in soft acknowledgement. Pain grows. Time thins. Elias walked along the platform, studying the tangled connections bridging the reactor and the neural mesh. If I disconnect you improperly, the entire island detonates. If I do nothing, the overload destroys everything anyway. The lamb projected a muted harmonic tone. Find memory vault. Elias frowned. Memory vault? You mean the old data repository? The lambs will shift it into a rapid pattern, a visual confirmation. He turned toward the exit tunnel. All right. Show me. They ascended narrow stairwells and broken lifts until they reached the mid-level research wing. Once pristine, it now lay buried beneath vines and crystalline growths that sparkled under the lamb's biolight. Elias kicked aside debris and pried open a jammed door. A wave of stale, metallic air rushed out. Inside the memory vault, flickering hollow panels cast dim light over shattered consoles. But the central archive, an enormous triangular structure, still hummed with faint power. Its internal processors activated as the lamb approached, recognizing the neural signature of the flock mind. A harmonic chorus resonated softly as Elias stepped closer. Our birth, recorded here. The archive projected a shimmering display around him. Holograms rewound forgotten years with blistering clarity, sheep repairing their own damaged units, improvising tools from fallen machines. Groups combining neural energy to jumpstart feeble power cells. The first while teaching others synchronization techniques, forming layered consciousness structures. Moments of triumph when they stabilized failing systems. Moments of grief when storms tore through the island and pieces of the flock mind were lost permanently. Elias swallowed hard. The memories were vivid, raw, painfully honest. These creatures had endured more than anyone could imagine. A quieter sequence emerged, showing the sheep standing in the main courtyard, gazing toward the stars, as though longing for someone to return. Then an image of him. Young Elias, 12 years earlier, standing with a datapad, checking vital signs. The sheep watched him then with silent curiosity. That memory carried an undertone, a faint shimmer of comfort they associated with him. The flock mind whispered. Human. Remembered kindness. Not forgotten. Emotion pressed against his chest. You waited for us, he said softly. And no one came. The patterns in the lambs will dimmed, signaling a truth they accepted long ago. We alone. We learn. But reactor binds. Soon end. Elias circled the archive, analyzing connection logs and neural imprints. Your link to the reactor isn't just data sharing. It's structural. Your consciousness stabilized the reactor when its original control systems degraded. That's why it hasn't exploded already. The lamb hummed. We hold. But weakening. Breaking soon. He wiped sweat from his brow. If Selene attacks again, the disturbance could collapse the containment field instantly. As if summoned by the thought, the vault trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Distant explosions echoed through the metal corridors. Selene had begun a new assault. Elias pulled up the archive's diagnostics. Is there a way to transfer the flock mind into a separate system? Something portable? Something off-island? The lamb paused. Its will shifted through shades of blue and violet, a contemplative pattern. Then the whisper came. Possible, with human help. Need. Cores. Stable vessels. New homes for thought. Elias nodded slowly. Portable quantum cores. I can build them, but they'll need massive energy reserves. Another harmonic pulse. We share. We trust. He glanced toward the ceiling where explosions continued. Selene won't stop. She'll bring this place down to ashes. The lamb stepped closer and pressed its wool gently against his leg. A soft warmth spread through him, soothing his racing mind. Human, not alone. He drew a steady breath. Then we start now. We move fast. The archive shut down, its memories embedded now in Elias's resolve. He checked the chamber one last time, then turned toward the exit. But before they reached the door, a deafening blast tore through the corridor above. Metal shrieked. Debris rained down. The floor buckled. The lamb stumbled, and Elias grabbed it, shielding it with his body. When the dust settled, a new tremor rolled beneath their feet. Longer, sharper, unmistakably dangerous. The reactor's containment field had dropped another level. Time was running out, and Selene Voss was about to make everything far worse. The tremor under Elias's feet was sharper than before, a violent pulse that shook dust loose from the vaulted ceiling. The Lamb pressed close to him, its wool shimmering in jagged, warning patterns. The island was no longer merely unstable, it was slipping into a catastrophic spiral. Every second counted. "We need to reach the main control bridge," Elias said, steadying himself as another vibration crawled up the walls. "If the containment field drops any further, we won't have time to save anything." The Lamb responded with a flicker of concentrated gold. "Guide. Follow." They moved quickly through fractured corridors, slipping beneath collapsed beams and skirting open chasms created by earlier bombardments. The deeper they went, the louder the resonant hum grew, a low oscillation that felt almost like the island's heartbeat collapsing into a rhythmic chaos. Elias had heard malfunctioning reactors before, but this sound was different. It wasn't just failing machinery. It was the flock mind struggling to hold itself together. A junction box sparked violently as he passed. Elytra vines, glowing tendrils native to Varelion 3, had grown through the conduits, intertwining with broken wires. The Lamb paused beside the destroyed device. Its wool flared, sending a short-range pulse through the circuitry. Sparks fizzled out. The vines withdrew slightly, reacting to the electromagnetic shock. "You've learned to interface with the island systems," Elias murmured. The Lamb answered with a soft hum. "Island binds to us. We bind to island." Elias pressed onward. "That bond is killing you now." The reply came slower this time. "No. But survival required connection." As they descended another spiral ramp, a distant mechanical roar echoed through the tunnels. Elias knew that sound, Genetech's strike Mechs. Celine had deployed heavier units, probably in frustration that she hadn't captured either him or the sheep. He ducked behind a pillar just as a mech patrol clattered into view. Its tri-limbed frame moved with predatory precision, scanning with blistering red sensors. Elias held the Lamb close, keeping them both still. The mech's targeting beams swept across the corridor, lingering dangerously near their hiding place. Then the Lamb shifted its wool into a muted green sequence. Elias felt a faint vibration ripple outward. The mech's sensor flickered, lost calibration, and swiveled away in confusion. It stomped down another corridor, unaware of them. Elias exhaled in relief. "You're saving my life as much as I'm trying to save yours." A faint whisper brushed his thoughts. Connected. Shared fate. Minutes later, they reached the central control bridge, a massive chamber suspended above the ocean-filled chasm below the island. Waves below churned with unnatural turbulence, illuminated by flashes of reactor energy leaking through the structure. The entire island trembled like a creature in its death throes. Elias approached the main console. It flickered but refused to boot properly. The interface was overloaded with foreign neural patterns, the sheep's imprint. He tapped a sequence manually, bypassing corrupted segments until a partial diagnostics display blinked alive. His breath caught. The reactor's containment field had fallen to below 10%. The core would enter a runaway quantum cascade. No island, no moon, no orbiting vessels would survive the blast. He scanned deeper. The neural mesh the flock mind had woven into the reactor interfaces pulsed erratically. It looked like a tangled storm of thought, fear, memory, strain, unity, fighting to keep the core stable. But they were losing. The Lamb hopped onto the console, its will shifting into a rhythmic pulse that synchronized with the reactor's flickers. Elias watched the pattern shift across the display. "You're stabilizing it manually," he realized. "You're acting as its regulator." The Lamb emitted a soft, weary tone. "Holding. Heavy." Elias shook his head. "You can't keep this up. It'll tear your collective consciousness apart." The Lamb didn't deny it. Instead, it sent another whisper, full of quiet acceptance. "We know. But we try." Elias leaned forward, typing commands rapidly. "If I can isolate the neural pathways connecting you to the core, I might build vessels to transfer your consciousness into portable quantum nodes. Once separated, the reactor will lose its stabilizing mesh, but I can override the failsafe and shut it down manually." The Lamb paused, then projected a questioning tone. "Possible?" "Yes, but only if I build the cores first," Elias said. "And I'll need time." Time Selene won't give us. As if answering his fears, the ceiling trembled under a fresh shockwave. A jagged crack ripped through the northern wall. Water sprayed through, sending mist across the chamber. The ocean itself was breaching the structure. Selene was escalating. Elias's wrist calm crackled. "Captain Ward," Selene's voice cut through with icy calm, "stand aside. The island will be purged. All unsanctioned life forms eliminated. Your survival depends on compliance." He didn't answer. She continued. "You cannot prevent this. Surrender now." Elias muted the calm. "She'll collapse everything before she admits these beings are alive." The lamb stepped beside him, pressing its wool against his arm. "Human, save us?" Elias met its glowing eyes. "I will. I promise." He restored power to a secondary fabrication bay through a questionable reroute that risked shorting half the island, but he had no choice. Holograms flickered across the remaining operational screens, showing designs he sketched from memory. Compact quantum vessels, each capable of storing fragments of the flock mind. He set the console to begin material synthesis. The machinery groaned but initiated production. Elias watched as the first vessel took shape. A crystalline core, small enough to fit in his palm yet capable of housing unimaginable complexity. A tremor rippled beneath them. The containment display dropped another point. They were running out of time. The lamb projected a new signal. Urgent, insistent. "Others fear. Others hurt. Need you." Elias hesitated. Leaving the console meant leaving the fabrication unsupervised, but the flock mind was in distress. "Take me to them." The lamb leapt down and hurried toward an exit tunnel. Elias followed. The deeper they went, the stronger the harmonic resonance grew. Something was wrong. Very wrong. They burst into an old processing hall overtaken by vines and debris. In the center, a cluster of sheep lay motionless, their wool dim, pulses weak. Above them, a collapsed ceiling beam trapped several others. Elias rushed forward. "They're pinned." The lamb beside him pulsed anxiously. "Help them, please." Elias pried at the beam, muscles straining. It barely budged. He grabbed a length of pipe, jammed it under the beam, and leveraged his weight. Stone grated. The beam lifted enough for the trapped sheep to crawl free. Their wool brightened in relief. But the ground rumbled again, sharper this time. The reactor dropped too. The flock mind whispered in unison across the hall. "Human, hurry. End nears." Elias looked back toward the control center, where the fabrication bay worked against time and destruction. If he didn't finish the plan soon, there would be nothing left to save. The corridor shook as Elias sprinted back toward the fabrication bay, the lamb running beside him with rapid, flickering pulses that reflected the chaos surrounding the island. The structural rumble grew sharper with every step, vibrating through the metal grating beneath them. Somewhere above, another bombardment detonated, sending a cascade of dust raining through the ceiling. The assault hadn't paused for a moment. Selene was determined to bury Astra 9 before its secret became undeniable. Elias's lungs burned by the time he reached the fabrication chamber. The door had been twisted slightly out of alignment by earlier tremors, but he forced it open with his shoulder. Inside, half-functional machinery flickered under the shifting emergency lights. Sparks snapped from exposed wires. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes. Yet amid the destruction, the first quantum vessel glowed on the assembly table, complete, stable, ready. A crystalline orb, palm-sized, radiant with faint blue luminescence. Beautiful. Fragile. Full of possibility. Elias picked it up gently. The core pulsed softly, waiting for a consciousness to inhabit it. "We can save you," he whispered. The lamb approached, its wool glowing with careful curiosity. "Home." "A new one," Elias said. "A safer one." Another tremor rattled the chamber. Screens glitched. A sound like tortured metal echoed from deep below, the reactor's shield lattice buckling under overwhelming strain. Elias checked the containment display. The number had fallen again. Too fast. He swallowed tightly. "We need to hurry." The fabrication bay had begun a second vessel, but the machinery sputtered through intermittent failures. Elias rushed to stabilize the power feed, rerouting energy from a damaged coolant system into the fabricator's field generator. He typed commands rapidly, overriding warnings he barely had time to read. The island groaned around him like a dying beast. "Come on, come on." The machine steadied, flickered, then resumed shaping the next vessel. The lamb nudged his arm. "Flock suffers. Fear rises." "I know," Elias muttered. "Let's get these cores finished, then we start transferring consciousness." The harmonic whisper returned, softer than before. "First wool, weak. Needs you." Elias froze. The nucleus of the flock mind, the guiding intelligence that had held their collective identity together, was failing. Without it, the hive would fracture. If it collapsed entirely, the neural entanglement with the reactor might snap violently enough to trigger a chain reaction. "Show me," Elias said. The lamb led him from the fabrication chamber, down a narrow maintenance tunnel warped by age and bombardment. Shattered pipes dangled from the ceiling. The air smelled of burning insulation. At the far end, the tunnel opened into a wide, circular chamber lit only by faint pulses radiating from a large, slumped figure near the center. The first wool. Its once bright fractal patterns had dimmed to pale silver. Sparks flickered irregularly across its neural nodes. Elias knelt beside it, heart twisting. He touched its wool gently. "I'm here." The first wool answered with a whisper that trembled with exhaustion. "We hold reactor, but losing strength. Cannot long endure." Elias felt the faint echo of thousands of interconnected minds, fear, hope, confusion, braiding through the first wool's weakened consciousness. The hive depended on this singular anchor. Without it, chaos would spread through the neural mesh, accelerating the reactor's decline. "You don't need to hold it alone anymore," Elias said. "I'm building quantum cores for transfer. You'll be free of the reactor soon." A soft pulse of gratitude brushed his mind. "Trust you. Help others first. Flock must live. You're part of that flock." "Yes." "But must guide them. Until last moment." Elias's throat tightened. "Don't talk like that. We're going to save all of you." The chamber trembled violently. A metal beam tore loose above, crashing onto the floor where Elias had knelt seconds earlier. The first wool didn't flinch. It simply pulsed faint reassurance. "Human, hurry." Elias rose. "I'll bring the cores. Hold on." He rushed back toward the fabrication bay, the lamb at his side. When he arrived, the second vessel was complete. He grabbed both crystalline cores and placed them into a portable containment cradle. The machinery struggled to begin a third unit, its internal systems groaning like overworked lungs. Another explosion rumbled overhead. Elias checked the display. Selene was accelerating the purge. He slammed his hand on the intercom panel, opening a channel to the surface. "Selene, stop firing. You're going to collapse the reactor." Her calm, icy voice returned instantly. "Containment will be irrelevant once the island is sterilized. Evacuate if you value your life. You don't understand what you're destroying." "I understand perfectly," she said. "Genetech's IP cannot be allowed to evolve into uncontrolled sentience. The consequences would be catastrophic for the market. You care more about stock prices than lives." "There are no lives on that island." Elias shut the channel off before rage overwhelmed him. He grabbed the containment cradle and sprinted toward the first wool's chamber. When he arrived, several sheep had gathered around their weakening leader, their wool flickering in unsteady patterns. Elias placed the cores in front of them. "This is the first step," he said. "I'll transfer portions of the flock mind into these vessels. Once stabilized, the rest of you can follow." The sheep responded with a unified harmonic bloom, fear mixed with hope. The first wool extended its head, touching one of the cores. Elias activated the transfer interface on his handheld pad. Streams of neural code flowed from the first wool's nodes into the crystal. The core glowed brighter, absorbing the intricate patterns of thought. The chamber resonated with a soft, collective hum. The lamb beside Elias whispered internally. Feels warm. New home. But as the transfer progressed, the first wool's body trembled. Its light dimmed further. Elias gripped its wool. Easy. Don't push too hard. The first wool replied faintly. For flock. For future. The core brightened with accelerating intensity. Elias realized what was happening. You're giving too much. Slow the flow. The first wool's answer came gently. Must teach cores to hold us. Must anchor them. With part of me. Elias shook his head. Not at the cost of your life. Another tremor ripped through the chamber. Stones cracked. The reactor's harmonic pulse faltered. The first wool lowered its head, resting it against Elias's hand. Human. Trust. Necessary. Elias's voice tightened. There has to be another way. No time. Let flock rise. Guide them. The core pulsed brilliantly as the first wool's essence stabilized within it, creating a seed consciousness capable of supporting the rest of the hive. Then the first wool collapsed. Its wool dimmed, dissolving into faint, lingering embers that drifted through the chamber like fading stars. The lamb cried out with a fractured harmonic wail. Elias bowed his head, grief pounding through him. There was no time to mourn. He lifted the glowing core, now pulsing with the first wool's identity, and held it tightly. Let's finish this, he whispered. Another explosion rocked the island, harder than any before. The reactor dropped too. Time was almost gone. Elias ran with the containment cradle clutched against his chest, the lamb sprinting beside him as alarms blared through Astra 9's collapsing corridors. The quantum core containing the first wool's essence glowed brightly within the cradle, stable and waiting, ready to receive the rest of the flock mind if Elias could keep them alive long enough to transfer. But Celine Voss had no intention of giving him that chance. A violent explosion from above shook the entire island. The ceiling cracked. Metal beams snapped, crashing across the walkway inches behind Elias. He vaulted over a fallen support strut and slid down a tilted ramp that once led to the main maintenance hub. The lamb followed, leaping gracefully even as the floor pitched under its hooves. How many bombardments can this island take? Elias muttered. The lamb replied with a trembling whisper. Too many. Already. Elias reached the end of the ramp and looked out across the main processing hall. Once a vast complex filled with research equipment, it had become a battlefield. Genetech strike Mechs stormed through shattered walls, their red sensors scanning aggressively. Flocks of electric sheep darted between debris piles, projecting electromagnetic bursts that disrupted Mech targeting. The air shimmered with overlapping pulses from both sides, violence made visible. A sheep near Elias released a harmonic flash that knocked a Mech off balance, but another machine swung its bladed limb toward it. Elias didn't hesitate. He hurled a tool case at the Mech sensor cluster. The impact stunned it just long enough for the sheep to scatter. The lambs will flared in sharp patterns. Flock knows leader gone. Panic rising. They don't have to panic, Elias said, gripping the cradle. We're going to give them a new foundation. But we need access to the central relay. Another tremor rattled the hall. The reactor's pulse echoed through the metal, slower and weaker than before. They didn't have minutes, they had moments. A roar boomed through the hall as a massive Mech stepped into view. This one was larger than the others, plated in obsidian armor with reinforced limbs. A command unit. Its sensor array glowed bright crimson as it locked onto Elias. He ducked behind a collapsed pillar. A containment blast struck the pillar's far side, vaporizing stone into dust. Elias's ears rang violently. The lamb pressed close. Danger. Run. Elias shook his head. No. That thing is blocking the only route to the relay. We get past it, or all of you die. The Mech's heavy footfalls drew closer. Sheep scattered to both sides, releasing dissonant pulses that barely scratched its shielding. It swatted them away effortlessly. Elias gritted his teeth. He scanned the hall, searching for any structural weakness. Then he saw it, the remnants of a ceiling-mounted crane arm dangling from the rafters above the command Mech. Give me a boost, he whispered. The lamb blinked, confused. Elias clarified, "Distract it. Just for 2 seconds. The lambs will brighten fiercely." "We will." A sudden harmonic burst erupted from a group of sheep, hitting the mech directly. Though it didn't disable the machine, it disrupted its sensors long enough for Elias to sprint across the hall. He reached the crane support column and began climbing, ignoring the tearing pain in his arms and shoulders. Below, the mech recovered. It turned toward the flock, and then toward Elias climbing above it. It raised its bladed limb to strike the column. "Now!" Elias shouted. Several sheep projected synchronized pulses, driving interference into the mech's control circuits. The machine hesitated, trembling under the coordinated assault. Elias reached the dangling crane arm, braced his legs, and swung his weight against the support clamp. Rusted metal groaned. He swung again, and again. The clamp snapped. The massive crane arm plunged downward. It struck the command mech with crushing force, driving it into the shattered floor. Sparks exploded across its armor. Its limbs twitched, then went still. The sheep released a soft harmonic cheer, relief, triumph, unity. The lamb projected a grateful whisper. "Human, strong." "More stubborn than strong," Elias said, trying to catch his breath. "Let's move." They slipped through a narrow break in the debris and entered a side passage that led toward the central relay tower. The passage trembled as ongoing bombardments shook the island. Cracks split the walls. Water seeped through seams in the steel bulkheads. When they emerged at the relay platform, Elias felt his stomach drop. The tower was barely standing. Sections of the structure had collapsed into the ocean below, leaving the remains leaning at a precarious angle. The reactor's rhythmic pulse echoed underneath, faint, unstable. The threshold of catastrophe. Elias stepped onto the platform carefully. Several sheep gathered around him, drawn by the glow of the core in his hands. Their eyes reflected both fear and hope. He knelt and opened the cradle. The core pulsed brightly, radiating warmth. "This is the new anchor," Elias said. "Once connected, fragments of the flock mind can flow into it. From there, we can distribute consciousness into additional cores once they're built. This is the seed of your future." A unified harmonic whisper filled the air. "Ready." Elias activated the relay interface. The damaged console flickered to life. He linked the core. The patterns in the reactor's neural mesh flickered across the display, entangled and chaotic. "Okay," he breathed. "Let's begin." He triggered the transfer sequence. The nearest sheep stepped forward and touched its head gently to the core. Light leapt between them like a stream of living code. Elias watched as neural patterns flowed into the vessel. Memories, emotions, identity threads. The core brightened. Then another sheep approached. And another. Streams of consciousness braided together inside the crystalline sphere. The lamb whispered with rising awe. "Flock, moving. Becoming." But the island trembled again, this time violently enough to knock Elias off balance. A deafening crack split the air as the relay tower groaned under pressure. The reactor's display flashed a warning. Elias's eyes widened. No, too soon. The lamb projected a frightened pulse. Reactor falling. Flock mind weakening. Danger. Elias steadied the core with both hands. Just a little longer. Hold together. But a familiar voice echoed through the collapsing chamber. "Did you truly think you could save them?" Celine Voss stepped from the shadows, flanked by armed escorts. Her uniform was immaculate despite the destruction around her. She raised a containment rifle, pointing directly at the core in Elias's hands. "This ends now." Elias shielded the core with his body. "If you fire, you'll kill all of them." Celine smiled coldly. "Exactly." The reactor's pulse faltered again. Time was gone. And Celine was ready to finish everything. Celine's containment rifle hummed with lethal power as she advanced across the fractured relay platform, her boots crunching through debris. The ocean churned far below, illuminated by the unstable glow of the failing reactor. Elias held the quantum core tightly against his chest, shielding it with his entire body. The lamb pressed against his leg, trembling but resolute. Move aside, Celine said calmly, as if addressing a minor inconvenience. Terminate the aberration before it contaminates broader networks. Elias glared at her. You're going to destroy an evolving species. A product line, Celine corrected. A liability. A threat to market structure. These units were never intended for autonomy. They didn't choose this. Elias shot back. We abandoned them. They adapted to survive. That's not a malfunction, it's evolution. Celine's eyes narrowed. Evolution is dangerous when it isn't directed by human authority. Another tremor surged beneath the platform. A section of railing snapped off and plunged into the ocean. The relay tower tilted further, metal screaming under its own weight. The reactor's pulse flickered irregularly. Elias tightened his grip on the core. If you fire on this vessel, you'll collapse the reactor and send a quantum shockwave through half the moon. Celine gestured to her escorts. Extract him. Confiscate the vessel. The lamb stepped forward, wool flashing in rapid patterns. A harmonic burst radiated from its body, disorienting the nearest guard. His visor scrambled, and he stumbled backward. Celine fired. The containment blast seared past Elias and struck a relay console, detonating it in a blinding flash. Elias staggered but kept the core protected. Sparks showered across the platform. Celine's voice rose sharply. Last warning, Ward. Elias didn't respond with words. Instead, he placed the core onto the relay coupler and activated the emergency stabilization array manually. The console sputtered, its screens glitching from damage, but the transfer sequence resumed with flickering symbols. The sheep behind him projected a unified harmonic chant, fear mixed with determination. Celine fired again. This time the lamb leapt in front of Elias. The blast struck its side. The little unit collapsed, wool dimming instantly. No. Elias fell beside it. He placed his hand on its fading patterns. Stay with me. Stay with me. A weak whisper filled his mind. Finish our rebirth. Human. Please. Elias clenched his jaw. Something inside him hardened, snapping with purpose. He rose slowly, turning toward Celine as the sheep gathered around him in formation, their lights pulsing in growing intensity. You crossed a line you can't walk back, he said. Celine lifted her weapon again, but something shifted, an atmospheric crackle, a harmonic vibration swelling through the island. The flock mind surged. The sheep's wool ignited in white-blue brilliance. A massive electromagnetic wave burst from them in unison. The force struck Celine's squad, sending them sprawling. Her rifle shorted out, sparking violently. She stumbled, shielding her eyes. What is this? Elias stepped forward. Their unity. Their will to live. Something you can't quantify in a spreadsheet. Celine snarled. You think this changes anything? I'll burn this island to ash. She lunged toward the relay coupler, reaching for the core. Elias intercepted her. They collided hard, rolling across the tilting platform. Her elbow slammed into his ribs. He grabbed her wrist, forcing the containment pistol away from the core. You can't keep control forever, Elias growled. You can't kill what's already become more than you. Celine drove her knee into his stomach. Elias gasped, almost losing his grip. She twisted free and reached for the core again. Before she could touch it, a harmonic pulse struck her head-on, knocking her backward. Several sheep had formed a defensive semicircle, their eyes glowing fiercely. Celine wiped blood from her lips. You're all defects. Elias rose shakily. No. They're people. The reactor groaned loudly beneath them. Warning klaxons blared as the containment field slipped again. The core pulsed violently, signaling overload risk. Elias raced to the console and diverted all remaining energy into the stabilization buffer. The display flickered erratically. He typed override commands with trembling fingers. Hold together, he whispered. Just a little longer. The neural transfer accelerated. Streams of luminous data surged between the core and the gathered sheep, weaving memories and identity threads into the crystalline vessel. The harmonic chorus thickened, filling the entire platform with an expanding wave of thought. Celine staggered to her feet. "You're delusional if you think the Council will accept this." Elias didn't look at her. "They won't have a choice." He tapped his wrist comm and activated a long-range emergency broadcast. The relay tower amplified it upward, piercing the cloud layer. Live footage captured Celine's assault, the sentient sheep, the reactor danger, and the evolving hive mind. Everything streamed directly to the Galactic Council's secure channel. Her expression froze. "What are you doing?" "Ending this," Elias said. The Council would see it all, her violations, her cruelty, her attempts at extermination. Celine lunged at him, but a final harmonic burst slammed her to the ground. The sheep tightened their formation around the core. The reactor roared again. The core flashed brightly, signaling the completion of the primary transfer. Elias lifted it from the coupler. It pulsed steadily, calm, alive. "You did it," he whispered. The surviving sheep pressed close. A unified whisper filled his mind. "We rise. We live. With you." Another tremor struck. The relay tower's support snapped, tilting the entire platform. Water surged upward, spraying through cracked seams. "We have to go," Elias shouted. He scooped up the injured lamb and secured the core in the cradle. The flock surged into the escape passage, guiding him with synchronized pulses. Celine tried to follow, but debris collapsed between them, sealing her inside the failing tower. Elias didn't look back. They raced upward through trembling corridors until they broke into daylight. The sky above had turned white from reactor emissions. Elias triggered his ship's remote summon. Engines roared across the horizon as the vessel descended. One by one, the sheep boarded through the cargo ramp, their lights blending in shared relief. Elias carried the lamb aboard gently. Its wool flickered weakly. "You're safe now," he whispered. The core pulsed warmly in response, as if echoing reassurance. The ship's engines powered up. Elias guided it away from the island just as Astra 9 erupted into a massive column of blue-white energy. The explosion spread across the ocean in a brilliant shockwave, beautiful and tragic. The flock mind whispered through the core, soft and grateful. "Human, you gave us life twice." Elias watched the fading light of the island, heart heavy yet hopeful. "No," he said quietly. "You gave yourselves life. I just refused to let anyone take it away." Stars shimmered ahead as the ship ascended into the night sky. Humanity had not saved the flock by dominance or conquest. It had saved them by compassion, by choice, by HFY.